Hello. Perfect. Yeah, good morning.
I'll just pass on.
Good morning. The Subcommittee on State and Foreign Operations and Related Programs will come to order. Let me start by welcoming everyone to the Member Day hearing. This is your committee. I also, again, I thank my colleagues for taking time out of your busy schedules to really discuss issues that are important to you within the state and foreign operations priority. I apologize for the delay in starting, but you all know that there's a million things going on, and so we just had to wait so that we had everybody here. As we work to develop the fiscal year 24 bill, input from you and all of our colleagues on both sides of the aisle is frankly not only welcome, but it's essential. It's essential for us to be able to do our jobs in a proper way. Obviously, the President's budget is delayed, so we don't have and we have not received testimony on the administration's funding priorities. However, it's no secret that the fiscal environment and frankly the rampant spending in the last number of years is requiring and needs to require for us to make tough decisions. The American taxpayer deserves to know where their hard-earned money is going, and frankly, what is achieved by that money being spent. That is why it is our duty of this subcommittee, and frankly, all the subcommittees of appropriations, to scrub every line and justify every dollar in our bill. There are obviously many, many bipartisan priorities in our bill, from the safety and security of our diplomats abroad and supporting our allies around the world, including the Middle East, fighting HIV and AIDS, and pushing back against the threats of freedom and democracy around the planet, particularly at a time that we see an emboldened and very aggressive communist China and Russia. So there's much to discuss, and I know that my colleagues, our colleagues before us, have devoted much time and much effort to championing a lot of priorities and are deeply passionate about the critical issues around the world, which is why we're so grateful that you have taken the time to spend it with us this morning, and I look forward to hearing your testimony. I want to thank the ranking member. I know she's been busy and she had to run from pretty far away to get here. And so let me first recognize her for any opening statement that she might have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I apologize. Many of you know I've been trying to repeal the 2002 authorization to use force. That's the Iraq authorization for 20 years, and we finally got it through the Senate hearing on Foreign Affairs. So thank you very much. I apologize again for being late. So I will be very quick in an opening statement and yield to our witnesses. But what I learned, and I'll conclude by saying this, over the last 2 years as chair of this committee, there's so much interest in the work of this committee as it relates especially to development and diplomacy. We had over 6,000 member requests, and I was really quite surprised that so many members are very focused on our global peace and security, diplomacy efforts. And so I look forward to hearing the testimony. And again, I apologize for being late, but thank you, Mr. Chairman, very much, and I'll yield.
Thank you to the distinguished ranking member. Without objection, the full written statements of all members will be included in the record. In order to keep our schedule, I would ask that each eyewitness limit your oral testimony to 5 minutes. And I would like to recognize Ms. Radewagen for your testimony, and thank you for your patience. You're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman Diaz-Balart and Ranking Member Lee, for the opportunity to testify today on the need for an increase of U.S. investment in the Pacific Island region in the FY 2024 Appropriations Bill. The United States is a Pacific Island nation. We have been a Pacific Island nation for over 100 years. The day starts over the skies of Guam and the Marianas and ends in my home, the Pearl of the Pacific, American Samoa. However, since the end of the Cold War, we've forgotten our commitments to the region. Over the past year, we as a country have been making overtures to our Pacific Island neighbors, with many Pacific Island leaders meeting with both the administration and congressional leaders in the fall. We have a great chance this year to further engage. We just signed memorandums of understanding with the freely associated states of Micronesia, the Republic of the Marshall Islands, and the Republic of Palau to continue the compacts of free association. However, words only go so far. Now is the time for action. The People's Republic of China is watching, and any failure to capitalize on our recent engagements with the Pacific Islands will be swiftly filled by the PRC. The State Department has just opened an embassy in the Solomon Islands, with more embassies planned in the region. However, those embassies require staff and funding to be effective. For example, we technically have an embassy in neighboring independent Samoa, but it has a skeleton crew staff, with the ambassador being in New Zealand. However, the PRC has a 3-story building, one of the largest in the country, and it's fully staffed. If we expect to compete with the PRC, we probably need to take our diplomacy a little more seriously. Today, I humbly ask that the committee support U.S. engagement in the Pacific with $160 million for the Pacific Islands, matching fiscal year 2023 funding. This funding is essential for expanding an American footprint in the region and ensuring a free and open Pacific. Each dollar that the United States invests in the Pacific my island neighbors from being exploited by the People's Republic of China. For the United States to maintain and deepen its relationships in the region, we must put real resources towards our diplomatic presence, partnerships for development, and engagement with civil society. Thank you for your time and for consideration of the needs of the people of the Pacific. I yield back the balance of my time.
Well, thank you very much for being here today and for speaking to us. I greatly appreciate your hard work. Thank you so much. Now we'd like to recognize Ms. Omar for her testimony. And again, as I said before, thank you for your patience this morning. You're recognized. Good morning.
Good morning. Chairman Diaz-Balart, Ranking Member Lee, distinguished members of the subcommittee. I want to begin by thanking you for giving me the opportunity to testify today. Around the world, the people who fight for democracy, for human rights, for basic human dignity, they look to the international community for support. They look to the United States for support because we profess the values of upholding human rights and international law. It is our obligation to ensure that when we profess these values, they are not just nice-sounding words in a press release or diplomatic speech. We must back up our words with action. Quite simply, when we say we are champions of human rights and democracy, we should mean it. Part of this, in my view, has to do with our funding priorities. Our national funding priorities are a vital part of that mission. When I've traveled to Africa on congressional delegation trips, I've heard over and over about the importance of balancing the 3 Ds: development, diplomacy, and defense. I'm sure you all have had those same conversations, probably also with the same conclusion that we frequently get the balance wrong. This subcommittee is at the front line of getting that balance in order. We are often too reactive to crises and conflicts around the world, waiting until they have spiraled out of control before we begin paying attention to them. I urge you all in this year's bill to significantly raise the budget for the Complex Crisis Fund, the Atrocities Prevention Fund, and the Reconciliation Program Fund. The Complex Crisis Fund allows U.S. aid to respond with flexibility and creativity to emerging conflicts and has shown significant success in Bangladesh, Mali, among other places. The Atrocities Prevention Fund gives the administration the tools it needs to act quickly to prevent mass atrocities and serious human rights violations from occurring. The Reconciliation Program Fund provides communities resources for locally led peace building and reconciliation programs. This allows for durable and sustainable peace. Combined, we spend less on these programs globally than we spend just on foreign military financing for Colombia alone. Investing in prevention and actively working to stop conflict before they spiral out of control is both a moral and a strategic imperative. These 3 funds support immensely important work while costing us comparatively little. It should be clear that spending to prevent atrocities and conflict is valuable on its own, but it also represents a wise investment of taxpayer dollars. Money spent now to prevent instability represents results in less money spent later to respond to those crises. I also would like to urge this subcommittee to be much more aggressive with your use of human rights conditions on security assistance and arms sales. In my first 4 years in Congress, I have led and co-led numerous letters to this subcommittee making the case for stricter human rights conditions on a number of countries, including Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Colombia, Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. The truth is that list could be 2 or 3 times longer. I strongly believe that there should be strict human rights conditions attached to every dollar we send abroad in FMF or any other security assistance and arms sales. This comes back to my point about prevention. When we arm regimes that then go on to commit serious human rights violations, it is not just a betrayal of our stated values, it is also a national security risk. Any administration is going to fight congressional mandate human rights conditions, as we have seen on many occasions. It is incumbent on this committee to strongly assert our authority on this matter. Again, Chairman Diaz-Balart, Ranking Member Lee, distinguished members of the subcommittee, I am grateful for this opportunity. I look forward to our continued collaboration to ensure that the United States really does put human rights and civilian security at the center of our foreign policy. I yield back.
Thank you so much, and again, thank you for taking what is the most valuable thing that we have, which is time, to spend it with us today. Thank you very much. Mr. Sherman. Good morning, sir. Again, thank you for your patience, and we greatly appreciate you being here this morning. And you're recognized, sir.
Chair Diaz-Balart, Ranking Member Lee, I thank you for your time, which, as you point out, is the most valuable thing you have. With 26 years of service on the Foreign Affairs Committee, I've got a lot to say, but I'll limit myself to 5 minutes. First is the need to provide, I would suggest, $3.5 million to Voice of America so that they can broadcast in the Sindhi language, the language of southern Pakistan. Pakistan is perhaps, it doesn't always get all the press, but the most complicated and one of the most dangerous situations we face. It is the only nuclear state that has had a military coup, or in this case, several. While we reach out to the people of Pakistan in the Urdu language, that is the native language of only 8% of Pakistanis. There are over 30 million Pakistanis whose native language is Sindhi. And I think that with $3.5 million, and I've been working on this for a long time, we could make sure that the Sindhi language service was a separate service, not just a subset of the Urdu service, and we could reach out to a critical part of Pakistan. Second, we have passed through the committee, the Foreign Affairs Committee, twice, unanimously, the Peace and Tolerance in Palestinian Education Act. My hope is that that can be included in the Appropriations bill and actually become law, as so many foreign affairs bills, that is their route to becoming a statute. We are the top donor to Israel. We are also the top donor to the Palestinian people, including the Palestinian Authority and UNRWA. The Palestinian Authority curriculum in the schools is not consistent with American values and not consistent with working toward peace. Students are taught to emulate Dalal Mughrabi, who killed 38 Israeli civilians, including 13 children. The 45th anniversary of that attack is this Saturday, and it's why I'm reintroducing the bill on that day. My hope is that you will include it in your legislation. The people of Artsakh are an Armenian community that have lived in that region for really thousands of years. Joseph Stalin, in his evil wisdom, made that region part of Azerbaijan rather than Armenia. The result has been terrible conflict, including what is now a 3-month blockade of the Armenians living in that region. They desperately need humanitarian assistance, and I hope you are generous in providing humanitarian assistance for the people of Artsakh. The Rohingya people are not getting as much publicity as they once did, but the situation remains dire. These people have been denied citizenship and even safety in Burma or Myanmar, and are living in Bangladesh. To show you how desperate they are, they have fled to Bangladesh, one of the poorest countries in the world. The World Food Program has announced that it is reducing rations by 17% due to insufficient funding. While USAID has provided significant assistance in the past, including announcing $75 million in late January, I hope that you would increase the amount that we provide to the Rohingya refugees. And finally, we have seen a terrible civil war in Ethiopia, and particularly its Tigray region. A peace deal has been signed, although not fully implemented. We have substantial disaster aid in the pipeline for Ethiopia. My concern is that the government in Addis Ababa will not get it to the people of Tigray, having just fought and to some degree won a brutal war that killed 600,000 people against that very region. And so I would hope that you would have very specific language insisting that the USAID make sure that a proportionate, that in proportion to the suffering, the Tigrayan people actually receive a portion of U.S. aid. With that, I actually yield back 15 seconds early.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. A very detailed presentation, and we greatly appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Congresswoman Manning, thank you for being here again. Also, just want to thank you for your efforts as the on the House Bipartisan Task Force on fighting anti-Semitism. So, again, you are recognized.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Lee, and members of the subcommittee. I really appreciate this opportunity to testify before you, and I want to begin by thanking you for your work on this subcommittee to make investments that are critical to so many aspects of our foreign policy, including the fight against anti-Semitism. I'm here today as the proud co-chair of the House Bipartisan Task Force for Combating Anti-Semitism. I work, of course, with my colleague, Representative Chris Smith of New Jersey, and 6 other colleagues on both sides of the aisle, including the House Appropriations Committee Chairwoman Kay Granger and Vice Ranking Member Grace Meng. The United States has a long-standing bipartisan commitment to fighting against anti-Semitism, and I'm here today to urge the subcommittee to strengthen our national commitment to this important priority by providing increased resources for the Office of the Special Envoy to monitor and combat anti-Semitism. As you know, in recent months and years, we have witnessed a major rise in violence, anti-Semitic violence, and threats against Jewish communities around the world and, frankly, in this country. History has taught us that attacks and conspiracy theories that target Jews frequently grow to threaten other communities and undermine the health and well-being of democracies. The Special Envoy is our only diplomat whose single focus is to monitor these disturbing trends and advance efforts to counter anti-Semitism around the world in all its forms. I applaud this committee for its prior support, including appropriating $1.5 million for the office in FY23, an incredibly welcome increase in funding. I'm confident that additional support and resources for the Office of the Special Envoy would make a real difference to our government's leadership in the fight against anti-Semitism. And that's why I strongly urge you to support $2 million in fiscal year 2024 for the office. We have made some progress in the fight against anti-Semitism, and in the past few years, many other countries and intergovernmental organizations have followed our lead by establishing their own dedicated national-level special envoys and coordinators tasked with countering anti-Semitism. At the same time, the threat of anti-Semitism continues to spread, take on new forms, and emerge in different parts of the world. These trends increase the workload of and the demands on the Special Envoy. While many countries around the world are facing a rise in anti-Semitism and could benefit from the Special Envoy's expertise, there are only so many countries the Office of the Special Envoy is able to visit due to limited resources. Additional funding for the office would support greater U.S. government engagement and leadership on this issue around the globe. An increase in the office's appropriation would also help enhance the professionalization and specialization of a dedicated staff to support the special envoy, especially as the position was recently elevated to a presidentially appointed Senate-confirmed position with the rank of ambassador. For these reasons, I respectfully request your support this year for the same year-on-year increase as last year, bringing the total funding for the office to $2 million for FY24. And I'm proud to join Representative Mang and many members of the House Bipartisan Task Force for Combating Anti-Semitism in leading this letter to the subcommittee supporting this request. Mr. Chairman, at various times throughout history, when anti-Semitism was on the rise, too many failed to confront this threat. That is why it's so meaningful that this committee and so many members of Congress on both sides of the aisle remain committed to fight this persistent form of hate. I respectfully ask you continue to support increased funding for this office that is so vital to the Jewish community, to our commitment to combating anti-Semitism, and to America's values and foreign policy. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you so very much for being here today and for your leadership.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. To the distinguished ranking member, any comments, questions at this time? Great. Well, therefore, this will conclude today's hearing, and obviously members may submit any questions for the record. With that, this Committee on State Foreign Operations and Related Programs stands adjourned. Thank you very much.